All right. Yay, we are live. And we try to figure out what I'm doing. I got all kind of situations situated right here where I was supposed to be easily reachable,
Right.
but it wasn't. Even though that was the intent. Oh my goodness. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, let's get it all settled up and give a few people a chance to jump on.
Okay.
Yeah, there we go. Learning how to use my gadgets.
Awesome. I
Oh,
know. It's like you
learn-
have to have a bunch of post-it notes to remind you to do all this
right?
production stuff behind the scenes. I'm like, I didn't sign up for that. I'm thinking I could just hit record and
And
go with the
go.
flow, but I'm watching the lighting and comments and all this other stuff. So yeah, I get it. Hey Raquel, how are you doing?
Awesome.
Keeping it real. Today's the day to
Right,
keep it real,
right.
y'all.
Keeping it real, keeping it real.
Hmm.
Listen, guys, those of you that are going to be joining us on the live and those that will be watching the replay, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us and engage in this great conversation that we're having. My name is LaQuita Mondley, and I have with me in the studio today an amazing guest, America's Supermom. And listen, when you hear her story, you're going to be I want to see if everybody is just as amazed as I am, because I was amazed. Let me tell you, LaChelle, I was amazed. Like, how did she do that on top of being, a fellow military wife, a fellow Army wife to be specific? So, for the next 5 weeks,
Mhm.
LaChelle and I will be meeting here at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time, 2 p.m. Eastern, and we'll be talking about the life of the military spouse and what that encompasses. So, listen, if you're a military spouse, tune in, set your notifications, put it on your calendar. If you know other military spouses, or if you yourself are single in the military and thinking about becoming married, you want to tune into these conversations to get a good idea of what that looks like and how to make it work, right? So we're all about making it work in a healthy way. Put that out. Making it work in a healthy way. So set your notifications 1 p.m. Central Standard Time, 2 p.m. Eastern every Thursday for the next 5 weeks. LaChelle and I will be having this great conversation. And you can tune in and join us from Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, as well as on Twitter. For those of you that are following me on Twitter, you'll be able to see it live as well as catching the replay. So, without further ado, Miss LaChelle, please go ahead and introduce yourself to those that might not know why you are America's Supermom.
Well, thank you so much, Laquita. And I just want to say that is the power of networking. We actually got connected and got on a Zoom call, and I don't know how many interviews we have had over the past. It seems like forever ago, but it has not been that long. And now we're doing a series together. So I'm telling you, I don't see what people's excuses are when it comes to really stopping with networking. But my husband and I have 15 children, and 10 of them are still at home, y'all. So that
Bless your
is
heart.
so
Bless your
that
heart.
is the moniker with America's Supermom. But in addition to that, it is really helping to empower women to understand that, yes, we can do a lot of things. We can have successful business and be a mom, but it doesn't have to be at the expense of our health. So I am all about really equipping women because I learned on my journey after 13 years of depression and 3 hospitalizations that it just doesn't have to be that way.
Right.
Had I had some insight or some tools in my toolbox, so to speak, I think I might not have had such a journey. So I'm all about sharing my story so that other women can avoid some of the pitfalls that I've ran into myself.
That's such an amazing story. We're gonna we're going to take that, if you don't mind, we're going to take that apart just a little bit
Mhm.
today. And because really your story is one that is an encouragement and empowerment to women, whether they're military spouses or whether they're civilian.
Mhm.
But because our story is our series is dealing with the military family, we'll look at it from that perspective, right? So,
Mhm.
if I recall, your husband was a reservist that got called into active
Mhm.
duty. You
Mhm.
know,
Mhm.
let's talk about that because we don't think about that enough when we hear about how the National Guard and reserves are called up on active duty and how it's,
Mhm.
there's so many stigmas surrounding
Right.
military life in civilian life, and it's it always boggled me how they are never even remotely close to the truth, but people
Right.
still believe them. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
So, that was quite a transition. I am now in Georgia, and that was the biggest catalyst for us being where we are today because my husband was a reservist. He was in the National Guard as well as the Army. But at the time when he was called up for active duty, he was called up in the Army and he had to come to Fort Benning, Georgia to train the troops that were dealing with Operation Desert Storm.
Mhm.
So it was to be a hardship tour. It was going to be 12 months, and uh, which meant that the family would not travel with him.
Mhm.
However, at that time, I was 6 months pregnant. And at that time, I can't even think. I should have prepared before we got on here how many kids we had at the time. I want to say it was like seven or something. So they were under the impression that I was going to, be by myself. And for
Mhm.
some women that do it, I understand that it is quite a sacrifice, whether you have one or two.
Mhm.
But for me, seven, that was just a little more than I felt comfortable being with him being I was in Indiana at the time. And
Mhm.
so it was like a 10 or 11-hour drive in order for us to see him. And then he was doing a lot of training. So his hours were crazy. So to try to coordinate when he would visit and all that kind of stuff, that just was crazy.
Yeah.
So we put our house up for rent. And because we thought it was just going to be a year. At that time, my husband worked for Pfizer. He was
Mhm.
a pharmaceutical sales rep with Viagra. Okay. I know it sounds crazy, but yes. So he was a
Oh,
pharmaceutical
they was
sales
going like
rep.
hotcakes, man.
Yeah, I can't make this up, y'all. So at that time, his job was going to be held for him and everything. The benefit for us was that he was an officer.
Mhm.
However, there also was this thing about not being quote unquote a real soldier, kind of because he was a reservist and he went
Mhm.
over to active duty. And, it was a little less evasive, I think, because he was an officer. So we moved the family and it was supposed to be 1 year. It ended up being two. And at that time, we just really liked the South. We were able to get a lot more house for our money. The cost of living was definitely better for us and the family. So we decided to stay. And so that is how we got here. And, that was pretty much our experience. I think it was one that was more on the positive side because, he was an officer, but nevertheless, it still was a challenge trying to navigate through the long nights, days, and weeks where, he would have to go out in the field. And I know you're familiar with all this in order for them to train and things like
Yeah.
that. So it really put me in a place to where, I was a leader with a lot of the people that were in his unit. We had
Mhm.
these weekly gatherings with the spouses, and
Mhm.
we called them just pitch ins. We would rotate the different locations where we would have it. All of our kids would play together. We would talk about issues that we were struggling with. And so that was pretty much my experience with being active duty.
With being active duty. Well, a lot of I've had the pleasure of meeting, several reservist families that were either National Guard or Reserve and had to come on active duty in that transition. And it's a tough transition. Like,
Mhm.
my husband was reservist in the beginning, and then he transitioned over into active duty. But he did it early enough in his career where I won't even minimize his experience. It was still a hard experience
Mhm.
when he came over from the reserves to active duty, because it was initially what you said. Oh, you were a part-time warrior. You know, let me take your rank because you don't know what you're doing yet to hold this rank. Hold up. Don't take my rank because then you're taking my money. Like, don't do that.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then for those who are, well on in their career, that switch into active duty, I mean, yes, it's an honorable thing when you're serving your country. But the thing that a lot of people don't understand or don't talk about is, depending on what that service member does in his civilian life, it's a dramatic pay cut. Like,
Mhm.
a very big pay cut, because let's just be very clear to those that are listening that may have military family members, they don't make a lot of money.
Mhm.
If you add up the hours that they work,
That's
they
true.
make less than minimum wage.
Yeah.
When you
Which,
when you
we were fortunate because based on his tour or something, uh I don't know, he had all this other extra pay, that happened. And then we had income from the fact that we had rented our house out. That
Mhm,
took care of that mortgage and everything. And then we always had like little businesses on the side. And that's the thing that kept us in the South when he let go of, well, when his tour was over,
mhm,
he was able to go back, but he started his own business at that time.
at that
And
time.
so that is, yeah, that's how we were able to maintain. But, we got a lot of benefits, but it wasn't as many because it was supposed to be a hardship tour for him.
Mhm. Yeah,
So
so
that was the
that
thing.
was the other
Yeah.
piece. Like,
Hmm.
how many families have we met, and myself included, depending on how long he was going to be away, that
Hmm.
would make that decision. Am I going to stay
Hmm.
where we're located, or are we going to bear the expense and move to where he is, so that we can keep some type of normalcy
Hmm.
in the home where you're used to functioning as a two-parent home. And
Right.
that's a choice that a lot of families make. Some of them make the choice. We at that time when we made the decision, he was doing what reclassing. He was leaving one. My husband's NCO was an NCO, so he was
Hmm.
leaving one career field, going into another career field, and he was becoming a military intelligence analyst. And so that school is a long time.
Mm.
And I just had a baby, and we were on that made baby number 3,
Hmm.
and it's like, do I want to do this by myself, or don't I want to do this by myself?
Hmm.
And truth be told, then they had that same question, like, do I want to be over here dealing with the things that I'm dealing with and not be able to go home at night?
Right.
When
Yeah.
I'm accustomed to leaving work at work and coming home and letting home be home. And so we made that decision. We moved to Arizona,
Hmm.
and it was out of our own pocket. And at that time, he was an E4, and E4 in the '90s made no money, married or not. Like, we
Hmm.
have, and the memory books that they have them to keep, the show. I
Hmm.
kept some LESs from before we were married, and then after we were married, and they remind me not to complain today. Like,
Hmm. Hmm.
the income was little to nothing. Like, I'm looking, sometimes I look at some of those LESs, and back then in the '90s, a whopping $995 every 2 weeks.
Wow.
And we were married with 3 kids.
Wow.
So, and I didn't work because it cost more for me to go to work,
With
because of taking care of
daycare
the
and all
kids.
that. Yeah.
Yes. So we're surviving off of that one income. It's like, okay, how do we do that? You know,
Hmm.
how do we do that? And it's, just the stories that we can share with other military families. It can be done. And that's one of the reasons that I wanted to have this series, because we can speak to it from an NCO family's perspective, as well as from an officer's wife perspective, it it is what it is. How can we get this done? And you're moving from place to place. Your significant, your husband or your wife, if the wife is a service member, has been called up on active duty or has been called to a deployment, and what are the stressors? What are the things that we can use as some coping tools,
Mm-hmm.
especially now with the current climate that we're in, with the things that are going on that we're involved with but not involved with.
Mm-hmm.
What are that, what how is that looking for some young military families? How are they
Mm-hmm.
adjusting?
Yeah. I mean, I think that is, and it is different military life. I know that we had, when we first got here, things weren't actually ironed out, and we actually lived off post. So we didn't even live on quarters. We didn't want to. So we got a house, and that baby was delivered 3 months later in a hospital that was local. Then we had another child that was full on born during active duty. And I want to say that we delivered in the medical hospital there on post, and quite a different experience. I mean, it's like you push yourself to the delivery room. I mean, it's not any kind of bedside manner. I
None.
think we were in there for like 36 hours and you're out of there. You
Yeah,
know
it's
what I
like
mean? It was like,
it's like
what?
it's like going to different. What do the kids have? The crafting stations. You have the one room that you go into for, so they can figure out if they're going to keep you. Then they put you in another room for the labor. Then they put you in another room for the delivery, and then they put you in another room for the recovery. It's like, every time I woke up, I was somewhere different. Like, where am I? What are you
It's
people doing to
crazy.
me?
In my room, I felt like I was in a dorm room. You know what I mean? Like one of those kind of bedrooms, very basic. I was like, oh my goodness. And I can only imagine what people go through. It's just really, that's a different life. And I mean, I know we probably don't need all the amenities and things that we are used to, but it was quite a different experience
It was such a thing.
when we had to get our own wheelchair and go
Oh,
to, I was like, well, okay, you know,
it was
that
like,
was crazy.
oh
Yeah.
man, oh man.
Hmm.
So when when your husband was called back up on active duty, and you were going to the weekly meetings, the spouse meetings, what were some of the issues that you guys have found that were you had in common, and how were you able to help one another deal with them?
Yeah. So, these meetings we actually created on our own. So my husband was part of a unit, and the majority of us had come from Indiana because they were reservists
Mm,
together. And
okay.
so, it was a hardship tour. So we had these families that had taken the idea that they're just going to go ahead and endure this tour with their spouse.
Hmm.
So they took on bringing their family down as well. And so it was really like a support group. We do have like family readiness type of things that were offered for us, but this is just us creating a nuclear unit for our actual spouses. And so we talked about just, the adjustment. It was really hard on the kids, but they were resilient. They got together with, we just created this extended family. We talked about, the work schedule, which was really a hard transition for many of us to
Mm.
have the spouse away so much, and, going to, I mean, they work like, I don't know. I can't even tell you how many
From the
hours.
can't
It's
see to
crazy.
can't see, like
It was dark. Yeah, it was
yes,
dark when they left, dark when
and
they
dark
got
when it came
home.
back.
I
Yeah.
mean, you're lucky to get a phone call throughout the day. I mean, just craziness. So, we just really came together to, talk to the kids, give them an outlet. We planned events and activities that we could do with them to kind of keep that normalcy
Hmm.
that we could. But just having a way that we can all communicate with whatever we needed. If somebody had issues with stuff that needed to be repaired at their house, or, we shared recipes and ways that we could work together for time management, things like that. So that's pretty much what we did.
That's real good. So during that, and that's again some of the things that, um, and I'm not saying that there aren't some civilian careers that have similar long hours,
Mhm.
um, and it's still yet hard on them as well.
Mhm.
So when you have, within the military, no matter what branch you're in, whether Army, Air Force, Navy, Marines, or Coast Guard, you know, that resiliency is necessary because
Mhm.
they can go to work and go to PT at 6:30 with one idea of a mission for the day, and by the time PT is over or lunch is over, there's a completely different mission, and you may or may not see them for the rest of the evening.
Right.
And communication is little, to none, and that can lead to have some begin to have some issues within the marriage.
Mhm.
And that's
Mhm.
one of the other things that I really wanted to make sure that we addressed throughout the this time that we had together doing the series, that because you're on active duty, or you're a military family, it does not necessarily mean that divorce is inevitable.
Mhm.
That's not what it means. We can have healthy relationships, or relationships that bounce back from tragic things that happen. And
Mhm.
just for yourself, or from the experiences that you've had and the people that you met throughout your husband's career, you know what are some of the tools that you've seen people use, or you yourself have used, to help keep the marriage thriving and healthy?
Well, I think it is definitely communication is important. Um, but I may be communicating and it's still not getting through. Okay. Keeping it real, right? Because
Yes,
I
yes.
think, but it's kind of hard because, my husband was an officer. You have this mentality that, the mission is the focus.
Hmm.
And, there are things that happen outside the family that don't, quote unquote, fit into that mission.
Hmm.
And they definitely have to be army first,
Hmm.
with a lot of things. And,
Hmm.
it's really challenging because although we talk a lot about family and a lot of the supports that they work to give to the spouses,
Hmm.
there is some element of disconnect
Oh
because
yeah. Oh yeah.
at the end of the day, you feel like somebody is just saying, "Yeah, we feel bad," just to keep you quiet because you don't really
Absolutely.
think that they are addressing some of the needs that you're talking about.
Right. Right.
So, but I think it's just important to be innovative.
Hmm.
Just like I mentioned, we had these meetings and yeah, we had family readiness, but they weren't proactive about these things. And we
Hmm.
had to do what we had to do in order to keep our sanity and communicate about these different things. Because, in my situation, I was just used to him going one weekend a month and sometimes, 2 weeks for his schooling that he had to
Hmm.
do. But we created a time where our vacations were centered around that. So whenever he had to go for his 2 weeks, we try to make sure that it was a time where the kids could go. And so we kind of had that little quote unquote active duty kind of mindset, but that was only 2 weeks. We'd stay uh on post, in officers' quarters and whatever they had. So, that just was not the same as being active
It
duty.
wasn't
Okay.
same as being on active duty,
Yeah,
right?
you know what I mean? Because it's temporary, but when you just felt like, okay, it might be a little different being an officer, but from somebody who just really was not really immersed in that, I really didn't
Hmm.
engage in that. Yeah, we had the balls and things like that, but it was really stressful because,
Hmm.
because he did have rank, there's this thing that you don't talk with people that are not
Yep.
officers, or But my husband has never been that way. He doesn't meet a stranger. And so that is one of the things that our unit was
Hmm.
very close knit,
Hmm.
regardless of rank. And so that was not the norm, though.
Hmm.
So,
No, not at
so
all.
many other things that later on you find out that, we were very unorthodox with a lot of
Hmm.
things that we did with him being an officer that a lot of people would frown upon. But
Oh, yeah.
it really helped us to understand people better. We learned and got a lot of insight from others that we probably would have never gotten had we had this separatist mindset that, hey, I'm an officer and I'm an officer's wife and I can't communicate with you.
Oh yeah, that fraternization is definitely frowned upon. Like
Hmm. Yeah.
it is definitely frowned upon, and it's funny that um, it goes across the board, right? So like
Mhm.
senior non-commissioned officers aren't to get too friendly with the junior enlisted.
Mhm.
Field grade officers aren't to get too friendly with the younger officers, and so I remember, and by the time we got to our third duty station, I knew this. But my husband's OIC at the time, he was a major. The OIC
Mhm.
in his shop, he was a major. Friendly guy. Did not meet a stranger. Absolute. I just love talking to him. He was funny. And his wife was formerly married to an NCO. So she wasn't quite yet comfortable being in that office, especially now her husband's a field grade officer. You go from
Mhm.
married to uh, a junior NCO to now married to a field grade officer. That was a big switch for her.
Mhm.
Anywho, out of all of the ladies in the FRG, she clicked with me. No problem. We were wives. We were having a conversation. Did we both know we absolutely should not have gotten that friendly? Absolutely, we knew
Mhm.
that. But new duty station for her, new duty station for us. And it was right after 9/11, like, and so many crazy things were happening. So everybody just needed somebody. And he's MI, and that's a just completely different world all in of itself. We can
Mhm.
talk about that on another show. Like that's a
Mhm.
completely different world all in of itself. And so as it would happen that particular Christmas, things were tight. Things were absolutely tight. And so what we wanted to do for Christmas, we couldn't do for Christmas. And
Mhm.
so you're talking to your girlfriend. So I'm venting. And I'm venting, and I told her what happened. And then later on that day, I get a phone call from my husband. And he goes, "You've been talking to such and such." "Yeah, I talked to her today. Why?" You know? And then I was like, oh my God, that happened. So being the compassionate individual that she is, she shared the story. And it's like, oh my God. So here we are having the conversation as it would happen. That evening was the unit's mandatory Christmas party. Oh my God. I can laugh about it now. It was not funny then. Like, so those of you that are watching that are civilian and you're like, why is this funny? It sounds weird. You have to know the military dynamic. Not
That's
that conversation should have never taken place
that is
between
so
he and I.
crazy.
And in the ripple effect that it had,
Well,
even
I'm
though
just like, why was it even shared? In terms
yeah,
of
I
that's
still don't have an answer
interesting.
to that question to this day. After she shared it and what happened, she knew she messed up. So she apologized to me at the Christmas party. Her husband had never been in it NCO, he'd always been an officer. And so he wanted to take that opportunity to try to take care of the soldier. And it just didn't go well. It did not, it did not go well.
That's
And,
crazy.
you know, my husband was smiling, and behind that smile, I was like,
He was
rolling
just
over.
hot.
I'm annoyed because I was just venting. It's like I was venting. That's it. I didn't need all of these other things, ACS to step in, the chaplains to step in, all of these other different entities to step in.
That
That's
is
not what
so
we
sad.
I was like, that was not the intent. I was venting.
Yeah.
And no matter how much you say, I was just venting, it didn't matter because the ball had already started to roll.
Yeah.
Um, but and needless to say, after then, his direct NCIC, then his wife tried to be my friend. I'm like, no, thank you.
Mhm.
This shall
Mhm.
not happen again. Just
Yes.
this will not happen again because I'm venting.
Right.
And it's not fair because the three of us should have been allowed to be friends. In my
Right.
opinion, we should have been able
Yeah.
to be friends and be okay, but we could not because of the
Right.
positions that our husbands held. And so now
Mhm.
everybody's kind of having to keep everybody at a respectable distance because of the fraternization piece,
Mhm.
so that things won't get misconstrued, and crazy things won't happen because it's either at that time it's either the army's not going to do anything or they're going to really overcorrect.
Yes.
It's one extreme or the other extreme.
Yeah.
Nobody knows how to make that fine line in the middle work.
Right. Yeah, it is a challenge, and we were very fortunate, with a lot of the mindset that my husband had, because we never really had an issue with that. But it's one of the things, like with our kids, we just teach them that people are people. Rank, for us, I mean, it just didn't, not to say that there's no value in it or something, but
Mm-hmm.
we just didn't let that be a definition of, how to navigate with people. We just saw people as people. And if we're all on the same team, it doesn't matter, what role you're playing, we're still on the same team.
We're on the
And
same team.
so we were pretty fortunate to be able to have that. I mean, I'm sure there were a lot of people that it made them uncomfortable. It wasn't anything that we went around parading about,
Mhm.
but we just didn't pay attention to people's rank, and really more so when we went through this period of having these weekly connections with the spouses, there was no rank, at the door. And really, it was so funny because for the longest time, I thought that everybody was the same. You know what I mean? I'm like, I got kids, okay, 7 or 8 of them. I'm thinking about what I gotta deal with every day. Am I paying attention to what somebody's rank is and all that kind of stuff? It all doesn't make sense. That's all I'm
Right.
thinking, right?
Right.
And,
You definitely were in a utopia, and for sure,
right.
my
Yeah,
husband
we
just
were fortunate.
commented that was which is why we always have to be cognizant of intent versus impact. Yeah, it was a lesson learned. Like the
Mhm.
the intent in the conversation was two women venting.
Right.
The impact of that was now everybody in the unit thought that we didn't have food, we didn't have money, we didn't have, like, they thought the worst. And it's like, no, I'm saying all bills are paid, all things are done. I'm frustrated and upset because I can't get my kid the video games and whatnot that they want to have. So
Mhm.
Christmas won't be what I want it to be. And
Mhm.
when that ball started rolling and we had to accept the help that we did not need, then we didn't even have anywhere to put it.
Right.
So I'm like, now you got people coming to the house to make sure, like, I
Right.
told you, this is, it was not the intent of the conversation. I was just venting because came by the stupid video game and a couple other things that we wanted to get. And very much, it was definitely a teachable moment. And what it taught me was I had to become more cognizant. I knew
Right.
what the ranks were on the chest
Right.
because I'd been helping him study for promotions for years. But that was at that particular duty station was the first time that I ever had to interact closely with the senior non-commissioned officers as well
Mhm.
as so for us, the senior non-commissioned officers E7s, E8s, and E9s.
Mhm.
And my husband was an E4 promotable at the time, still young, not quite an NCO, but on his way to PODC to become an NCO.
Mhm.
And where our housing area was right next to the field grade officer housing area. So it was majors, lieutenant colonels, colonel, and full birds
Mm-hmm.
there. And so I had to learn to be more cognizant. It didn't matter how nice they were to me. I could only let them be
Exactly.
nice to me from a distance,
Yeah.
you
And I
know.
get that. And like I said, I think that has a lot to do with, the mindset versus, being in the army or a reservist.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of things that a lot of that culture is a little bit more lax
Mm-hmm.
when you, I believe, are a reservist. And so that was another thing that kind of made that transition a little more challenging. However, we took it in stride. And the unit that he was a part of, they were very close knit, and that made it easier because their culture that they came to the duty station with was prior culture that was already set up, and there was
Mm-hmm.
but for other people where we came into this place, but it was kind of like a world within a world.
Mm-hmm.
Even though
Yes.
we were there on post, but we created other things for the people that came with us. A lot of them lived off post. We only had a couple of them that lived on post. And so we were able to kind of maintain that same culture. But definitely understanding, even though with that dynamic, when we went to balls or had certain situations, we could see based on the interaction with other people,
Mm-hmm.
and places where we positioned to sit and stuff like that, that we just knew that, they were very serious about
Very
keeping
serious.
people's ranks together and all that. I'm like,
Yep. Very
and
serious.
even still, girl, I couldn't even tell you what people's ranks are. Okay. My husband, he was like, oh, because what's next after the major? Because he was almost,
Lieutenant Colonel.
yeah, so he was all upset about not doing that. And I'm thinking, okay, I don't know anybody who had 15 kids was doing what you were doing. I mean, let that go. Plus he got hurt. So he had to deal with that, you know. But girl, yeah. So I'm like, I think major's good. I think
You
you
think Major's good?
got
Major
going.
is, I mean, it's not bad. It is
Yeah.
good. It's
Uh,
definitely good, but they want to um, continue in that forward progression in their career to the lieutenant
mhm.
colonel, and then uh,
Mhm. Full
that
blood
then the full
colonel.
bird, and let's see how many stars I can get. So
Right.
and then I definitely get it. My husband retired as an E8,
Mhm.
but love to have been sergeant major. Like would
Yeah.
love to have been an E9. And it was, though, the more rank he got, the more responsibility he had, the different
Mhm.
positions that he was sitting in. Like when we were stationed in England, it was high stress. I
Mhm.
enjoyed it. Don't get me wrong. I love living overseas,
Mhm.
but the position that he had carried a lot of stress for me.
Mhm.
Um, and for my children,
Yeah.
because, and we'll talk about that on our next episode, like the stress that military life can have on your kids and
Mhm.
and your spouse, depending upon what you do, what your rank
Mhm.
is, what position, how visible you are,
Mhm.
how many rooms you're in with the who's the who and who knows what when, all of that.
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
my husband, when we were in the UK, his position was he was the senior US enlisted leader for the NATO
Mm.
Intelligence Fusion Center. That's like two sentences worth of stuff, y'all. Like he told me, and I was like, what? Okay. It took a while for me to finally, one, remember it all, and two, halfway
Right.
kind of understand what he did. But the
Yeah.
bottom line takeaway was there was not a lot of room for my kids to be kids, for them
Mhm.
to make mistakes
Yeah.
that normal kids would have, or
Mhm.
the children of service members who were sitting in that position,
Mhm.
because they've got to be these model individuals. Well, I mean, they were ninth grade, seventh grade, sixth grade, and second grade. They were not model citizens. Like
Mhm. So
they
true.
were at the ripe age of foolishness, like
Mhm. Yeah.
exploring life and trying and testing boundaries.
Yes.
And because of where we were and who daddy was. It wasn't, we couldn't test those boundaries, son. Yeah, I know your classmate did it and nothing happened, and you did it and the whole world has come to an abrupt halt, you know.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
uh, and that's some things that we can definitely dive into that. And I am not gonna say I'm gonna let my daughter come on this live because she ain't got no filter. I might pick my son. Let me pick my son to share an opinion or two about that.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yes,
So true.
we have one of the viewers said she loved the conversation. She
Mhm.
perceives that being married to an officer is like marrying two personalities.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Mhm.
An officer and a family man. And this must have been tough for your husbands. Yeah, she should. I salute you, ladies, for your patience, sacrifice, and perseverance.
Thank
Absolutely,
you.
absolutely. Because when they're at work, and when they're at home, they have to learn how to take work off,
Right.
come home, and be at home. Um,
Mhm.
and it's not easy.
Yeah.
It is
And I
not.
think it's always kind of like, they're really not fully present
Yeah.
because, I know in the case of my husband, based on what he was doing, they could call him at any time.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like, really kind of disconnected. Yeah.
It's disjointed
Mhm.
depending on what type of duty station you're at. Like
Mhm.
we were at Fort Hood, rapid deployment, so really disjointed. And rapid deployment, for those that don't know, that means the people that are stationed here are always on the move to go somewhere else, wherever that hot action is.
Mhm.
And if you're here, you're constantly preparing to go to where the hot action is. And
Yeah.
so, yeah. And
Well,
I
see,
think
and
you
where
guys
my
is rapid
husband,
deployment as well.
yeah, so where my husband was, Fort Benning was the infantry training for those who went directly overseas.
Yeah.
So that was their basic training ground. They left from there and went right to fight.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So yeah, depending on where your service member is stationed, what their MOS is, or what their career
Mhm.
field is for officers, what their rank was. It's a whole lot of factors that keep them disjointed, and it's the
Mhm.
nature of the job. You know,
Mhm.
while we were in Germany, my husband was a SARC, sexual assault response coordinator.
Mhm.
And that's 24/7, 365. Because I mean, you can't really put a time clock on someone choosing to violate someone in a horrible way. Like
Mhm.
people don't tend to do that in normal hours. It generally happens in odd hours. And so
Mhm.
um, at that time we had our own home church, and it
Mhm.
would never fail. If he made it to the Sunday school service, somewhere in the middle he was going to get a phone call because something happened and he needed to go, or he got a call to come out at 3 or 4 in the morning because
Mm.
something happened. And then he wouldn't get back in until whenever it was, everything was done and and taken care of for that moment.
Mhm.
So he could come home, sleep, and then get up and go. And that wasn't just his whole job. Like they have the jobs, the extra duties that they do on top of what their regular job is.
Mhm.
So yeah, it makes it really hard to be present. Um, but you figure out how to make it work. And that's what this series is all about. Some of
Mhm.
the tools and tips that we've done over the years to figure out how to make it work. And prayerfully, those that are listening that are military families, or if you know and love someone that is a military family,
Mhm.
tell them to tune in every Thursday at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, where myself and Miss LaChelle, America's Supermom, we're going to be sharing our story
Mhm.
and our journey as military spouses. With between the two of us, we've got probably what 45, 50 years of military spouse under our belt, both 20 plus years
Yes.
of
Yes.
being Army wives.
Mhm.
Myself as the wife of a senior non-commissioned officer, and Miss LaChelle as the wife of a field grade officer. So
Mhm.
we got you covered, ladies and gentlemen.
You want to say hello? She
Hi.
just got home from school.
Awesome, awesome. So,
Hmm.
Miss LaChelle, we have went over our time, and we do that because we love
I
talking.
know.
I love talking. I really love
Mm-hmm.
talking to you.
Mm-hmm.
But before we go,
Mm-hmm.
again, those that may have come on late, please take the minute to introduce yourself, tell people where they can meet you, where they can follow you, how they can connect with you.
Oh, for me, I'm sorry. My daughter was in the background. She was just talking hard, and I was trying to make sure y'all couldn't hear. Okay. Um, but the best way to get a hold of me is here on LinkedIn. Yeah. So you can just follow me there. I am on all social media platforms, but LinkedIn is, I'm trying to get my little uh, audience together here because I do a Friday show where I have people come on and share their insights about their ways to be successful on Friday afternoons. So they can catch me here on LinkedIn.
Awesome, 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 awesome. And Miss LaChelle is America's Supermom. If you missed her intro in the beginning,
Hmm.
go back and watch the replay. Yeah, go back and watch the replay and catch that. It's like, why is she America's Supermom? She is America's Supermom because she's fabulous. Like, she is the mom of 15 children, and 10 of which are still at home.
Still at home.
You
Okay.
deserve all those crowns, Queen. Like, you deserve all those
Yeah,
crowns.
just pray for me. You know what I'm saying? Because every day is something.
And
Every
see,
day is something.
we didn't even get a chance to talk about that this time. We'll talk about it again. Like, you, military spouse, entrepreneur, mom
Hmm.
of 15 kids, and you're a pastor's wife. Like,
Hmm.
you've got a boatload of responsibilities. We're gonna keep unpacking some of this stuff. We're gonna keep
Hmm.
unpacking this over the course of the next 5 weeks, and let's see what happens. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in and providing some amazing feedback. Hit those like, share, and
Hmm.
subscribe buttons. Set those notifications so that you can see when we come on every Thursday for the
Hmm.
next 5 weeks, 1 p.m. Central, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Check out LaChelle's profile on LinkedIn. Set your notifications, hit that follow, set your notifications because you don't want to miss any of the live broadcasts and podcasts that she does as well. She's really big on mental health and making sure that not only are we being successful in the coins that we earn, but we want to be successful, healthy, and whole
Hmm.
uh, for our complete self. So until next time, I'm your host, LaQuita Monley. This has been LaQuita's Toolbox Live. You guys take care and God bless.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.